Wait, stop scrolling. You know that one person in your life who just doesn't care what anyone thinks. No drama, no posting every single moment online, no need for validation. That's not just personality. That's a whole generation built differently. Gen X grew up in a time when nobody was watching. No social media, no likes, no algorithm telling them who they should be. And honestly, that shaped their brain in ways most people don't even understand. So if you want to know why Gen X is the way they are, and why honestly they might be the most psychologically interesting generation alive right now, stick with me. Because this is going to change how you see them. Gen X. Born between 1965 and 1980. People call them the forgotten generation. And yeah, okay, maybe nobody talks about them. But here's the thing. While everyone is focused on Boomers and Millennials, Gen X was quietly becoming the most emotionally independent generation in history. And today, I'm going to break down exactly why. The psychology behind it, the dark side of it, and what it actually says about how humans adapt when the world just ignores them. Let's start with something most people don't talk about. Gen X didn't just grow up independent. They were forced to be. In the 70s and 80s, divorce rates hit an all-time high. Parents were working double shifts. And these kids, they came home to an empty house. Every single day. Psychologists actually have a name for this. Latchkey kids. And what happens when a child has to figure out the world completely on their own? Their brain adapts fast. They learn early that no one is coming to save them. So they stop waiting. They stop expecting. And they start handling things themselves. That's not toughness. That's survival psychology. Now here's where it gets dark. When you grow up feeling like the world doesn't prioritize you, you develop a very specific mindset. Trust becomes something you earn, not something you give. Gen X doesn't open up easily. And it's not because they're cold, it's because they learned early that vulnerability can leave you alone. Studies in behavioral psychology show that people who experience emotional neglect during childhood develop what's called avoidant attachment. They still want connection, but they protect themselves first. That's why Gen X can walk into a room full of people and still feel completely fine being alone. But here's what most people get wrong about them. People think Gen X is emotionally shut off, detached, maybe even cold, but actually, they feel deeply. They just don't show it. This is called emotional suppression, and Gen X mastered it. They learned that showing emotion didn't get them anywhere, so they kept it inside. They dealt with it quietly, alone. And honestly, that made them incredibly resilient. Gen X isn't loud about their pain, they just handle it and move on. That's why you see them as the calm ones, the stable ones, the ones who never seem to break. Now this is the part that actually explains everything. Gen X grew up before social media, before likes, before followers, so their sense of self-worth, it was never tied to other people's approval. Psychology calls this internal locus of control. Meaning they built their identity from the inside, not from what others thought of them. And that's exactly why they don't care about trends. They don't chase clout. They don't need validation. Because they already know who they are. And honestly, that's rare. Gen X didn't ask to be forgotten. But somewhere along the way, being ignored turned into something powerful. They became the generation that doesn't need permission, doesn't need approval, doesn't need anyone to tell them they matter, because they already figured that out on their own. Think about it. That's actually one of the most psychologically fascinating things about any generation alive today. If you learned something new today, make sure you like this video. And if you want to understand more about dark psychology and human behavior, stick around. I've got more coming.